So we talked about DNA structure. We talked about how it copies itself and how it's important that it copies itself correctly because it's the code. Today we're going to take some time with one of the difficult topics in biology, and that's the code itself and what it actually does. So the DNA code itself, remember that DNA is just a series of 4 letters, A, T, G, and C. It's the order those letters are in that determines the code. When the code is read correctly, it makes proteins. Now, this idea takes a little time to talk about because what you have to understand is that before we get too far, is that what you are actually made of, or what any living thing is mostly made of, is protein. When you look at a person, you say, well, I see skin and hair. I can see their bones poking out under their skin, like their kneecap and their elbow and their wrist bones, and around that is muscle. Exactly. All of that stuff, and maybe you already know this about muscle in particular, because you know that if you want to gain muscle, you have to eat protein. All of that stuff is protein. The color that makes up your skin is protein. So when we're talking about what you are made of is protein. And remember that proteins are made of amino acids. Because proteins are what you are made of, we'll come back to that idea in a minute. So, when you get right down to it, the only difference between me and you is our code. In fact, most of our code is exactly the same. You have 1 heart, 2 lungs, in the same places as I do. That means for those characteristics, our code is the same. Maybe you have the same color of hair I do. That means our code is the same for that. We may have different color eyes. That gives us a different code for eye color. But because we're humans, and we all stand here with 5 fingers and 5 toes and 2 arms and 2 legs, and we all look very much the same. Most of our code is exactly the same. In a couple of places, it's different. Mostly for the traits that make us look different from each other. So, remember now, DNA is in every cell. Specifically, DNA is in the nucleus of every cell. Because DNA stays in the nucleus, the code for a gene has to be brought to the place in the cytoplasm where proteins are made. Proteins are made in a ribosome. Back in 6th grade, when you did cell parts, you probably talked about the ribosome and how its job is to make proteins. But the DNA is in the nucleus. And the code for DNA that code has to be brought to the ribosome. The process of taking the DNA code from here to here is called the transcription. Transcription. Transcription is the job of something called messenger RNA. We'll abbreviate that as mRNA. mRNA. This is a difficult concept and one that's going to take you a little bit of time to learn. What's RNA? Well, RNA is quite a bit like DNA. mRNA is created by matching the nucleotides of mRNA with a part of the DNA that's meaningful. One thing you may not have known is that when we said that DNA is the code for you, only one side is actually the code. The other side is only to make a copy of the meaningful side. So your code, for example, would be something like TGAGAACT for something, for a gene, let's say for eye color. And if you have a different color than me, your code would be different only on that side. But then, of course, it would be different on the other side because A pairs with T and G pairs with C. Now, here's where people get a little bit confused. RNA has the same nucleotides as DNA, except RNA has a U instead of a T. So if you look here in the middle, this is a messenger RNA strand built from this DNA strand. Right here is a messenger RNA strand being built from this DNA strand. There's a C because it pairs with a G. Here's an A because it pairs with the T. Here's another one. Here's a G because it pairs with a C. But RNA, and we're not going to get into the great gory reasons why this is. In fact, we really don't know why it is. Has a uracil, a U, instead of a T. So wherever there's an A on a messenger RNA, you get a U. Here, 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 there. And again, I encourage you to take a look at the hyperlinks. Go to the, when you're done with the video here, or open another window, open the PowerPoint, and take a look at the hyperlinks. These little things here, if you click on that, it'll show you a web page that is an animation of this. We'll take a look at some in class too, most likely. So, for example, if I have a piece of DNA that reads ACGTC, the other side of the DNA would read TGCAG. But a messenger RNA that is made from that would read UGCAG. That's an important idea. So, the DNA, in order to read a gene, to get a gene, the DNA has to be opened. It's opened by an enzyme. The enzyme is called RNA polymerase. RNA polymerase goes along and matches RNA with DNA. Here's an example, another example of the same thing I just showed you. When the messenger RNA is made and it reaches the end of the gene, the messenger RNA leaves the nucleus and goes to the ribosome. And again, well, I'll click on this time, but I don't think that hyperlink is going to show up very well. I'll try it on the video here. Here we are inside the nucleus in a chromosome. Chromosomes contain DNA. Here's a piece of DNA. Right here is the strand that we're going to use. They talk about some terms you don't need to know. RNA polymerase molecule unwinds the DNA and then helps put in the messenger RNA strand. When you get done, it gets to the end, and here's our completed messenger RNA that's going to go to the ribosome. And again, I don't know how well that's going to show up on this video. Okay. At the ribosome, the messenger RNA code is translated into a protein. This is a separate process called translation. Remember, a protein is a chain of things called amino acids. There are 22 amino acids. Here is a list of some of them. These amino acids are carried individually. Probably should have written that down. Through the ribosome by something called tRNA. tRNA is also known as transfer RNA, and its job is to carry amino acids to the ribosome. These amino acids get hooked together by the ribosome, so we have amino acid, amino acid, amino acid, amino acid. They get hooked together, and that chain of amino acids, remember we talked about chains way back a couple months ago, make a protein. We're going to look at this in a little bit of detail in class. So I'm not going to go into any more great gory detail than that. So the code. We, being humans, in the last 60 years, have figured out that every 3 bases, every 3 on mRNA, which would mean that every 3 on a piece of DNA, is the code for 1 amino acid. The term we use for that is codon. Every 3 bases is a codon. We have charts. We have one in the books in the classroom, which I've referred to here, or we'll post a chart on the Moodle page that will help you figure out which messenger RNA codon goes with each amino acid. And we'll practice this in class. We'll take a look at the code in some detail in class. Okay? So, let me try this hyperlink again, but again, so here's an example of a code. Pretend that, and most of you, I'm guessing, can read this sentence. Why? Because your brain automatically does this for you. We're not sure how. But your brain automatically splits this into groups of 3. Now, for some of you, that might be harder than others. The fat cat ate the big rat. Each one of these is the code for a word. THE is the code for the word the. This corresponds directly to our idea of DNA 3-letter code words. So this is a codon for a word. You put all these words together and you get a sentence.